Monster Game Night is a dark comedy actual play podcast that contains personal and political horror. This show is not appropriate for children, and adults can find content warnings in our episode descriptions. Welcome to our Vampire the Masquerade Chronicle, Bluegrass by Night, where our storyteller pits a sweet, innocent vampires against a group of crazed cultists who control the fictional city of Jamestown. I am Russell, and I play our local La Sombra, Gordon.
This is Ben, playing the absentee Puttanesca Tomaso.
This is Nick, playing Jason, the investigator, Ban Joaquin.
And Josh, playing Clear Visions, I couldn't come up with another adjective, Toreador.
Hey, I'm Mike. I'll be your storyteller.
But yeah, so we're doing something a little bit different today, right?
Yeah.
We're going to be asking some questions and getting to know our characters and our players a little bit better.
So Mike, tell us, what's your favorite thing about the V5 system / World of Darkness in general?
I'm going to give some background to people listening, and I think that it's informative. I have run D&D for a long time. I ran a small amount of 3.5 in college, and I also then ran 5th edition. I skipped totally over 4E, but then I ran 5th edition for about 4 years, and my complaints with D&D were that it gets slow and it plods, as I'm doing right now. So I pivoted to Blades in the Dark by John Harper, which is an incredible system. I encourage anyone to check it out. We loved it. We had a good time with it. But what I wanted was a more freeing and flexible world. And what I realized was that V5 captures a lot of modern game design elements in that it lets you run combat that is gritty and cinematic and brutal and meaningful, but it is not built around combat. That I can go 4 and 5 sessions without combat because nobody is getting in fights every day, right? Nobody lives their life that way.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
Okay, yeah, I don't get in fights every day. And I wanted to run a game that was like that. And I also love that it is immersive because everyone can relate to being a human being in an urban fantasy game or a monster in an urban fantasy game. You have the setting in mind already. And I find that it makes for really awesome roleplay.
So dovetailing off of that, just follow up really quickly. Did you have any certain expectations coming in that have been changed by us actually sitting here and playing the system?
I thought I would use the social combat rules a lot more, and I have looked at them a lot, and I have never used them other than to look at someone and be like, you missed this roll, so you take a point of willpower damage.
Kind of dovetailing off that question, though. 5th edition, they really center everything around these 3 pillars, right? Social, exploration, and combat, right? Do you ever foresee our game kind of rewarding players for doing an exploration kind of setting within the World of Darkness?
Well, I have to be very careful about answering that question because one of your players is in possession of a very interesting map at this moment, and I will let you guess as to whom that might be. So yes, there will be some exploration. You will be rewarded for it.
Yeah, somebody's holding on us.
To get into, I guess, sort of just general cast kind of questions, something that I think that we've talked about a lot of off recording, but not really discussed too much in this type of setting is, what was everyone's sort of just general inspiration for their character?
I think I told all of you that I had an idea of gangs of New York. I wanted to be kind of gangster enforcer. And really coming up the lines with Tomaso, I kind of didn't intend to really go the typical kind of mafioso route, but that was just kind of how things evolved as I worked through it.
Okay, yeah, I like that. I really get that vibe, so that's cool. How about Jason? What kind of vibes are you feeling for him?
I just wanted to do something that I've done differently from characters I've played in the past. So that's basically where Jason kind of come from.
What kind of characters do you normally play?
Normally, in our last game, I played a gangrel, which I thought was a lot of fun. Definitely one of my favorites, a go-to. Just being that rowdy, chaotic, and Jason's just a lot more centered and down to earth than a lot of my characters would be.
Very nice.
Yeah, I kind of did the same thing with Tomaso. I just was I need to play something different. I'm usually a charismatic person that can get through talking. obviously I think the listeners can tell Tomaso's not great at using his words or barely keeps himself in control. So playing a total asshole is something that's very different for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally
But that was a little judging there. But
I mean, I personally play a lot of like typically smart characters. Gordon is a little bit of a kind of a different side to that, right? Like there's intelligence characters, and then there's those just super smart, like super manipulative, able to push those buttons of people. And that's kind of where I was going with Gordon. As to his specific like origins, it was actually because I read a book from the Manson murders. It was called Chaos. And I think I've told you guys this before, but essentially it looks into like the secret history of the 60s with the CIA involved and that kind of stuff. And that kind of like was the core of Gordon there for a long time. What about Clear Visions?
You guys did sort of the opposite. I wanted to really play into something that I enjoy playing. I like to play a very social, very like charismatic, personable kind of character. And I knew that I wanted to be all social all the time. Also, the Colonel Sanders dating simulator is hilarious. And I knew that I wanted to have some type of like, I'm not originally from sort of like the Bluegrass region. So I wanted to have that connection. And I was like, what better way to tie on to than somebody who is this Dr. Phil, Colonel Sanders, medium hybrid of just the worst personality traits.
So going along with that, right? We haven't really seen Clear Visions channel a whole lot, right? Or even really dig deep into his medium past. Are we expecting to see more of that in the coming episodes, or?
As a player, yes, I think that I did take like premonition, and I plan on taking some aura reading type powers. So I think that that is something that I would like to talk about and sort of bring up just via disciplines. But also, he would be very happy to give you a premonition any time if you can make it worth his while. Also, I think that a lot of the premonitions that he does
Isn't that
are
just the kicker.
yeah, they're personally fun for him. So if he can get around not using it, that's fine. He tries to do it when it's something interesting or something that he can use to manipulate the situation.
so going along with that, does he intend for like the visions and premonitions that he gets? Is he wanting them to be helpful in any way? Or is it exactly just for his fun, his financial gain?
No, so I really do think that he tries to help as much as he can with his visions, but there are moments he is a monster. So there is definitely times when he is clearly bored, does not give two shits, and can use them to definitely screw up a situation. And I'm looking at
And tries to be helpful when he's very clearly not.
well, yeah, and I'm looking at like purposefully telling people the wrong horses to bet on and stuff because at the end of the day, it's fun for him.
So speaking of monsters, Mike, what kind of monsters are we expecting to see coming forward in this campaign?
You haven't seen enough?
No, we haven't. Obviously,
I've seen enough.
I decline to answer that question. I will say that Minerva had a very long and storied life and left a lot of surprises in your future.
That is a very non-committal, non-answer that I appreciate.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm not
I
shocked
just
by that.
can't give it away. There are more werewolves. I'll give that answer away for free. There are more vampires
Oh,
in my
really?
Vampire the Masquerade game.
All right. Was there a specific reason for the bone gnawers sticking to the werewolves?
So Sniffs the Exhaust was very nearly a Silverfang. I came close to making him a Silverfang because I wanted him to be the embodiment of a werewolf who has set himself against the twistedness that vampires represent. But I also think it's very important that werewolves are broken. Werewolves are crusading heroes, but they are all fundamentally broken in some way. For a bone gnawer, it's more physically obvious and easier to roleplay the way in which they are broken than it is for something like a Silverfang. So for those of our listeners who may not be Werewolf the Apocalypse fans, bone gnawers are the downtrodden, lower class werewolves. Silverfangs are these upper class crusaders who all of them have some kind of mental quirk or condition that's almost Malkavian-esque. Sniffs the Exhaust is here circling the Bluegrass region to prevent from growing out and taking over the rest of the region of this beautiful, wonderful, lush forest, to stop that from falling to this like industrialization and awful growth that could happen. What that means is, because I have a Crusader, I need him to have a flaw. And the flaw I chose was Bone Gnawer, which means he's poor, doesn't understand social necessities, isn't great at subtleties or nuance, is just very upfront, and he's going to get in your face and he's going to do it his way because he's used to just getting shit upon. Also doesn't have a lot of respect from the local werewolf community.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about Silverfangs? It's not one that I'm really familiar with. I know you mentioned that he was almost one of them. So I was just wondering, why was he almost one of those instead?
Because I was trying to think about who would be taking this upon themselves, because the Bluegrass region is not an area that any werewolf is going to choose to defend, because it's not prestigious. There's nothing really special about it. And we're getting into this. Gordon came so close to seeing some stuff last time. It's an area that it's already kind of gone. It's already kind of destroyed by the coal mining and other activities that have taken place. And so my thinking was that who sets themselves this task of defending this area? And my first thought was Silverfangs, because they're courageous and strong, so they would take a huge, immense challenge upon themselves. But then I decided this was more of a burden.
Jason, so far we've seen a lot of humans being killed by the Coterie. And Jason really hasn't spoken up about this. And it's something we've kind of talked about in the past, but I want to bring to the listeners now, which is, how does Jason feel about these innocents being killed? And how does he reconcile that to his own goals as a crusader, as someone to protect the innocent?
As of up to this point, Jason's kind of been just like bottling it up. So he hasn't really been reconciling it too well, but he's just trying not to be combative with the other members of the Coterie.
As someone who is sort of a trained hitman assassin, is it more of like tied to your duty? At the end of the day, you're personally committing murder or death. The Coterie's doing the same thing. Why is it an issue?
Because his targets aren't typically like innocent people. He's usually
So I guess really the question there, right, is how does Jason then define innocence? Like, well, what is innocence in Jason's mind?
We can't get into that. That's gonna be that is a book right there.
Yeah, we'll be here
Like,
for hours.
Yeah. It's not that black and white.
Has Jason met any NPCs that he thinks are innocent? It's totally fine if the answer is no, because I intentionally do not write innocent NPCs.
Clearly, which is good, because they're all probably gonna die anyway.
It's the world of darkness. Nobody is purely innocent, though.
Not that I can think of. Mostly it's just been like the bystanders or like the targets of our feeding.
Okay, so here's a good question, right? Because it's one that I've been wanting to explore for a while, which is, does Jason find corrupt cops, or really cops in general, to be kind of this innocence or shield to protect the innocents? And if so, we've killed a couple of cops so far, purely by accident, right? Like,
Yeah, true.
but how does Jason, like, what does Jason think about that?
I think one of them was pretty innocent of anything.
Looking at the one where as soon as we cross the river,
yeah, that
Yeah,
one.
we were just like, hey, yo, like,
Yeah.
you're dead now.
You're dead now.
Yeah. But no, Jason's definitely been feeling really bad about a lot of that. He just hasn't spoken up about it at this point, and I might snap at some point. Well, we don't know.
So that actually,
Threatening us.
that actually brings up a really good point, though, was last episode.
But
right?
I mean, if a cop clearly shows himself to be corrupt, then that is a corruption that needs to be carved out.
Okay. So like last session, right, we Jason actually lost the point of humanity, right?
Yes.
And didn't feel remorseful for killing that mortal, which I believe is what it was for, right?
I thought it was because he didn't help. He allowed the mortal to die. I think it was because he killed her.
I didn't kill. No,
No.
Visions killed
Okay.
her.
But
yeah. So
Jason let her be killed.
exactly. So do you feel like Jason is maybe less bottling it up and just becoming more acclimated to death, and this is just the start of his slow slope downward into monsterhood?
Well, Jason has seen a lot of death in his very long life, so not so much that. Also, he was pretty drunk at the time.
So sort of on like a being uncomfortable to sort of do stuff with the party concept, Tomaso.
Yeah.
Why do you hate dissolving corpses? It's so useful.
Okay. Speaking
Please
of,
be our personal wood chipper, and you won't. Why?
so speaking of a topic that'll take a long time, I'll try to cut it down a lot. So it goes into a lot of different things. One of the things is that he takes pride in what he does, and what he does most of the time is enforce and kill. So he's removing proof of his good work.
But
Kind of-
okay, no, that takes us back. The bodies that we've been asked you to destroy were times when people were out of control and messed up. So it was not good work.
Yeah, it was.
That's what I ask.
Yeah,
is
that's
when
part-
it's a time that it would benefit us to cover it up. Why not?
Okay, so there's one other aspect to it, and it's the fact that he was raised Catholic. So in the orphanage that he grew up in, she's an old crone now, but she wasn't. She's basically his surrogate mother. And one of the things she always taught him was respect for the dead. So it basically is one of the few parts of his upbringing that he still carries with him, other than just growing up around violence and crime. So it's something that he just consistently struggles with. I mean, the one time that I can think of doing it and us actually mentioning it at least a little bit, we were rushed for time. If he wasn't rushed for time, he probably would have given the corpse last rites before he did anything, but we just didn't have time to do it.
So I know that one of the potential flaws that you can take is folkloric bane. Did you take that with Tomaso? And if so, why? If not, why not?
Oh, I totally did. Yeah, he's got a folkloric bane to holy water.
Yeah.
It'll
Specifically to holy water or
Yeah,
to
exactly.
any holy
holy water.
object? Okay.
Yeah, like if he gets hit by holy water, it's going to treat him exactly like the fire did.
I just think it's interesting because Clear Visions has the same thing, but like holy objects.
So why clear visions then?
It's sort of the same. He's very old. He grew up in like the 20s and the 30s. And I think at the back of his mind, he has that sort of religious aspect. It's one of those things of vampires are very good at branding, but a lot of the weird rumors and stuff that are out there about them, sometimes some of it is true. And I think that that's just one of the things that is pronounced in him.
So you feel like he just naturally thinks that because it's a holy object and he feels unholy, it's going to have more effect, and so therefore it does?
Yeah, it's one of those like, this is some curse at the end of the day, even though he's, I think, benefiting from it a lot. He's been able to extend his life. He should be basically on the out. You know what I mean? He might not even be alive currently if he wasn't given this gift. And it does have some drawbacks that I think that he spiritually feels.
Out of all of us, isn't he to the kindred life?
Yeah.
The youngest of us.
Yes. But he's the oldest soul.
Right. So he had the longest mortal life, so he has more of those habits that are ingrained within him.
Yeah. I really did picture him like while his late wife was living, they probably did go to church like every week and really had more of a simple life than he currently does.
That does lead into a question that I have for Clear Visions, because Clear Visions really sort of strikes me as someone who sucked the marrow out of life. It's pretty traumatizing, going from being immortal to being a vampire. What do you think that Clear Visions misses about his mortal life?
Oh, it's actually really easy and it's really simple. He was working at a coffee shop and he can no longer enjoy that. He can't make coffee and taste it and figure out different blends and mixtures that he could use to make that. it was a comfort time for him. He worked at a coffee shop with his wife before she passed, and he can no longer enjoy those things.
Clear Visions at times seems happy. He
Mhm.
seems to enjoy being a vampire at times.
It's one of those things of my personal belief is he looks at it as a gift. He would be dead currently. He is not, so he may as well use the time that he has and try to just make the most of it.
So he's about as happy as a vampire can be.
And he lived a long life. He's already accomplished a bunch of things. Why not try to do some things that are now out of the box and sort of just big?
What about Gordon? What sort of things has carried over from his past life?
Yeah, so like I said, I mean, Gordon's primary operis morandi is the fact that he is a spook, right? Like, think of like Nick Fury level of like secrets within secrets within secrets kind of thing. Even his
Also
name.
Guy Fieri.
That's true.
does
Also
secrets.
Guy Fieri. Yeah. He brings the boom to Jamestown. No, wait, that's not Guy Fieri. That's Emerald.
It's Bam.
Yeah. But yeah, I think with a lot of like Gordon, it's all wrapped in secrets, right? Even the name that you guys know now is not his real name. Everything he's done in his life has been kind of to further whoever he's working for, right? He's given, first he gave his life to the U.S. government throughout the 60s, and it ended his marriage, right? And then you look at, when he was turned and he started giving his life towards the La Sombra and furthering the La Sombra clan and their information gathering. And now it's kind of like he's entered into this rebellious phase of his life where he really wants to still help the La Sombra, but he also kind of hates life right now. Like, he realizes that everything he's done has always been kind of useless in a way, right? Like, looking back at some of his more covert missions, he sees it as just furthering the whims of whoever's in power at that time. And because of that, he's become very friction. Like he has a lot of friction with leadership as a whole right now.
Yes.
That makes sense. So it sounds like he might be the type who might have had a difficult time transitioning with his embrace.
Oh, absolutely. Like, his embrace was probably one of the more darker embraces at the table, honestly.
Yeah. So going along with that, since we know like part of his past is the fact that his sire basically interceded and ruined his whole life.
Yeah.
In order to then test him and bring him to that embrace. If that didn't happen, do you think Gordon would have stayed happy in his life, maybe turned away from the spy life, maybe even switched loyalties?
I don't think he would have ever switched loyalties. I don't think that that's within him. Like, despite the fact that he has clearly got some issues with authority going on, his loyalty is to his clan. And he very much embodies that whole my clan, right or wrong kind of mentality, right? And you see it with his dealings with Clear Visions and Tomaso even, right?
Totally.
His main goal is to further the clan's goals, not the Camarillas, right? If he had never been turned, he probably would have stayed a spy for the rest of his life until it killed him, right? Some of the things some of the ideas that I had going around about his past, it definitely wouldn't have been possible as a human. I think he would have died on a mission if he wasn't a Kindred at that point.
Do you think that part of the reason being Kindred has worked for him is because he has someone like the La Sombra to work for, and it's kind of a familiar kind of aspect, like his old job?
Yeah, I think so. Especially it helps that his sire was also his original commanding officer, right? It kind of helps tie him to the La Sombra, and not having anyone really to go back to also helps that a lot. And La Sombra is his family now, and kind of similar to the way Tomaso treats family with the Giovannis, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's always been an interesting dichotomy between our two characters, is that you view yours as family, and it's a very different relationship between that and the family that I have.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's different loyalties, there's different organizations, there's different issues. but there's still that same basic tenet of I've got to stay true to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really like that. Especially, it's funny you mentioned family. The Giovanni are the family, capital T, capital F. So, really, what made you pick the Giovanni?
Well, as I mentioned before, I was really looking for some kind of archetype where I could play an enforcer style character. And it really started to evolve in my mind that it just really made sense for him to have been picked up as part of the family organization in his younger years. And it was just something he was always working toward, even though it took until he came over to America to really learn the truth. And then he had the goal of just not being a soldati, but actually being embraced and becoming more important. Now, I would imagine there's some that regret doing that with him just because of the way he operates, but it's definitely something that's always driven him. Partly is being very loyal since he lost his actual family very young. Just having some kind of thing to be loyal to like that has always been important to him.
You know, you talk about loyalty and stuff, and how does Tomaso deal with like a Giovanni asking him to disintegrate a body for him?
He wouldn't protest as much at that point. Like in that kind of situation,
Good to know.
helping the family, it might be a little bit easier of a task. I mean, as you guys tell, he'll do it. He'll just complain loudly about it because it's something he doesn't like doing. Basically, I think you've probably noticed he tries to stay away from embracing most of the more, I don't want to necessarily say like metaphysical, but the weirder like occult side of the Giovanni, just because it's something he's not strong about. He's always been very grounded in the real world, and he feels like that's something that it just really isn't his lane.
So at what point was Tomaso embraced in his life then?
So he was like in his mid 30s, pretty much. He come over to New York. There'd been a little bit of action in terms of, Mike, help me out here. It was the
Sabbat. This is rooted in, if you've read the Vampire the Masquerade clan novels, there's an era when the Sabbat invade and lead an assault upon the east coast of the U.S., and the Giovanni were incredibly successful at repelling them.
That was really kind of coincided with when Tomaso came over. So he was really able to prove himself during all of that fighting. And that's what led to him being embraced and moving further up in the family organization.
Okay, so the embrace was always just kind of like in your plans as just a part of your life.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
It wasn't really that difficult of a thing for you then.
Yeah, exactly. Like as we've seen with Rosetta, for example, she's been a ghoul for a good while.
Oh yeah, and
But-
as somebody like I actually put the points in to make her sort of like part of our team.
Mhm.
It's something I really looked into of the Giovanni and Clan Hakeda in general. They ghoul for a long time.
Yep.
There is an extensive vetting process. You are ghouled, you're trained. They don't embrace lightly.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
they have to put a ton of time and work in to even advance that level.
Yeah. And
So I just think it's cool that Tomaso has thought about what kind of event would be able to basically push him up to make him up for promotion.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, part of the rushing forward of his embrace was the losses that they experienced against the Sabbat. So there might have been more argument against embracing him if there'd been more people around to argue against it.
If there weren't so many openings, would it have been an easier choice?
It's a great
Basically,
question.
yeah.
And we can't really know.
So talking about family has really made me want to bring this up to Jason, which is Jason's kind of a loner. He likes doing things on his own. Gordon's the same way, but kind of talk to me. Has he worked with other coteries in the past? Is this the first coterie he's worked with? Has he always been a lone agent?
So yes, as part of the Banhu Hakim, who are essentially mercenaries in the Kindred world, he would have gone through extensive training. His sire was military, so he got a lot of that the militaristic nuances that he learned from his sire, and then following through on just various operations worldwide. So he's been part of coteries in the past, but as he developed his skills, he's been able to do more things on his own.
Since he's the oldest out of all of us, would he consider this one of the most challenging situations he's facing off against this cult and all of this arcane stuff? Or is this kind of a walk in the park?
If he was with a more experienced coterie, it would be a walk in the park.
Ow.
The shade.
Speak for yourself.
The
kid.
sunlight and the shade.
So Jason's kind of, as the elder of the group, Jason kind of sees it as a learning experience to develop this coterie.
So he is my dad. Great.
Yeah, basically. So in that aspect, you can imagine how irked he gets because you keep calling him kid.
It really just goes to Clear Vision's aspect of we are a family together. We are a chosen family, and I can't help it that you are our de facto teen.
Right. So
Angsty.
on that same hand, you know, he's used to people treating him as a sort of younger individual, obviously, because he's stuck in that sort of form. In ways, he's also used that to his advantage, just allowing people to underestimate him.
So, would you say that if given the opportunity to cast a magic spell, Jason would age his body? And if so, what age do you think he would prefer to be?
Good question. Never really thought about that. He might do it, but not by a lot. He might just advance it so maybe he was less of a teen and more like maybe late 20s.
Okay, so basically, so he could drink,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
Born in the 20s, too. I think that does
Yeah.
kind of lead into one of my questions for him is what does Jason miss about his mortal life? He was embraced really young, and Jason came from a little bit of hardship.
Being embraced so young, Jason didn't really get a whole lot of that mortal experience. So he wouldn't really miss so much from the mortal life, so much as feeling like he's missed out on a lot of different experiences that he could have had.
So, clear visions. Why a sand crane?
Cranes are very linked to psychic energy and profit and fortune telling. I also knew that from a gameplay perspective, I wanted to have a bird, and I wanted to have a bird who was native to our current environment. Sandhill cranes are really well known for traveling up and down and through sort of the Bluegrass Appalachia area. And I wanted something that it is sort of a show-offy, sort of like it looks very fancy for an animal, but it is something that there is the presumption of doubt, or I could just say like, oh, it looks like a sandhill crane perched here. That's kind of, whatever.
So it kind of blends in.
Yeah. If we were in a more urban environment, I probably would have done something more like a dove or a pigeon or something like that. But because of where we're at, I thought it was very appropriate.
Let's talk about Rosetta.
Yeah.
What are your intentions with our lovely retainer that you've charmed?
So I wanted to have a ghoul. From a mechanic perspective, I think that they're interesting. I also knew that I wanted sort of a personal assistant to Clear Visions. I have been keeping it in my back pocket that if push comes to shove and we really need a fighter here and someone who will be a really strong ally, I as the player would have questions, but I am very open to giving her the embrace. But it's also something that would be an immediate slight to some of our powerful allies.
Yeah.
You don't poach like that. I don't know. I've thought about it a lot. I don't know. I feel like it's been sort of teeming under the surface of why are they outsourcing the training of one of their ghouls? That's not a typical Hikeda Giovanni thing.
Rosetta is deeply loyal. She is in this situation because of her ambition, not in spite of it. So this is something that she actually wanted to be here. She is here doing what she wants to do. Now, Clear Vision's embracing her would be a total change in her entire view of what's going to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that would break her would be understanding just how little of a shit the Hikeda really give about her.
Yep. And that's why I gave her the nugget of putting in a good word for her with the capo that one time. Because I know that's something that she really wants. Because I know her very well. Obviously, she and I have worked together plenty of times.
To sort of bring it back to, I guess, Clear Vision's motivation with her, I think he, similar to how he looks at Jason as sort of a surrogate kid, even though he's definitely not, he is hypercritical, but very proud of Rosetta. I think that he's trying to train her and get her to do things in a particular way that he enjoys, but also is there to, at the end of the day, take care of her.
So I guess that brings up a question of mine, specifically about Clear Visions and the way that he views Kindred life,
Mhm.
which is, of the four characters, he is the youngest by far.
Mhm.
And he's only been embraced, what, like 10 years, if that?
Yeah, it's like 30.
So do you really think that he has an idea of what the Toreador look for in new recruits? Has he ever embraced anyone? Does he know like what that process is like, what they're going to go through beyond what his was like?
I think that you're firmly getting into spoiler territory that I don't want to dig into. I also will say he has not embraced anyone, and he would not be looking for stereotypical Toreador features, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah,
That's my quick and dirty, and my lips are sealed.
So stop asking.
Never. So, Mike, let's kind of talk for a moment. I know that the general theme of Vampire the Masquerade is, an alternate world of where we are now, right? So can you kind of give us an idea of what made you choose Jamestown and what was the kind of the thought process into building this Bluegrass by Night setting?
That's a great question and something that everyone who runs a game wants to be asked. The thought process behind this started with the writings of a Scottish king who became an English king. That was the demonology. This was King James, and he wrote a pretty long and involved story. And also, this was in an era when the Americas were being colonized. And that meant that some of his colonists went into the new world with these ideas in their mind that they were going to find these beasts. And I decided, what if they brought them with them? What if they were there the entire time on your ship and you just didn't know about it? How would they influence your colony developing? And so I looked at places that I knew fairly well that I felt like I could shape and portray faithfully, but that I could also adapt and make them very clearly a fictional world, because it's so important to me. Something that I want to make really clear is that Bluegrass by Night is not meant to be an allegory for the real world, because there are many reasons. The biggest reason is that there's a lot of elements of US history that I am not prepared to speak to and that I don't want to be called to account to speak to. So instead, I'm looking at this as purely a work of fiction inspired by an element of history that I think is interesting.
So you're taking it more as it's just sort of inspired by some things. It's not totally grounded in it. But I really think what the core of what you're getting at is RPGs and gaming are supposed to be some type of escapism. The trouble with a lot of modern settings is it's very easy to get those conflicted sort of vibes. You know what I mean? You're bringing in too much of your personal life. It's not making it as much of like an escape and a social game that we are, at the end of the day, we're 5 people who are playing dice games and telling stories with our friends at a table. You know what I mean? I think if you bring in a lot of those more real world ideas, it muddies that. It makes it's conflicted.
But no, that's very true. That's my issue with World of Darkness. I like World of Darkness because of its similarity, but that is a fault in that it's very easy for it to fall into the trap of telling an alternate history or an allegory, which I don't want to do.
Throw it out there and have fun with it.
Yeah.
I do appreciate how, like Mike was saying before, we came together playing 5th edition fantasy sort of D&D. And to be able to see how much people have been able to improve their role play and really get into these characters, I think it comes with being in that modern setting. It's a lot easier to sort of inhabit that. I don't have to go through the mental hurdles of, okay, I am playing a half orc who was raised in the tribal setting, and also he lives in fantasy New York City run by a beholder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of hoops. Where this one, I can be like, okay, I'm a Southern gentleman who has a dead wife. Like, it's a lot easier to try to just figure out from a role play aspect of what I'm going to say and what I'm going to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like when I first joined up, I put together my character in like 15 minutes. It's a lot more fun to have one that I've really thought about and put a lot of effort into to realize. So going off the idea of really developing a character, Nick, in regards to Jason, with his arcane focus, do you think that's something he would have focused on in his life if he didn't get embraced?
Yeah, how many crystals does he own?
So no, definitely not. All of that mystery and arcane aspects never would have come to him in his life normally.
Would he have worked fast food? Sorry.
How did you guess his one true passion? Quick service dining.
He actually wanted to open his own.
Open his own restaurant. Yes, of course.
That's
supposed to-
chronicle.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, by the way, Jason's Deli, if you want to, hit us up.
Clear visions and the way that we've been treating his TV crew.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
easy,
That's a
especially
good
because we're
point.
short on time.
Yeah.
Clear Visions knows and fully embraces that his crew is replaceable. They are working in a Hollywood environment. Every single one of them are replaceable. He does not give two shits. Think about it. He's already hired at least 3 people in this season, which might not be what they want to think, but it's his reality.
So use them as you will.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
And he knows that he has the loyalty that they will throw themselves on the track for him.
So bad. I feel so bad.
I love it.
Was Clear Visions like that before he was embraced? Or is this his slow descent into being a monster?
I can confidently say he probably was not like that as a human, but he also wasn't fame driven.
Yeah, exactly.
And
It
I think
goes
that
right
those go
along.
hand in hand.
Yeah, it goes right along with it. I think that makes sense.
So would you say that this is his slow descent into being a monster?
I would say
True,
yes,
yeah.
but I think in the time frame that we've been playing this game, that descent has not been very slow.
I don't think it's been really all that slow for any of us.
No.
Yeah, I was going to say, I
Yeah,
think,
nature of the game.
nature of the game
Yeah.
was, yeah.
We are homing in when it's been ramped up.
We are monsters and we are starting to show it.
Yep. All right. Well, I thought it would be fun to wrap up by calling Mike on the carpet a little bit here.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right. So,
Dang it.
if the roles were reversed and one of us was the storyteller, what kind of kindred, what clan would you be playing?
I would be playing a Gumshoe Nosferatu, like one of my Lonnie members. I fucking love them. They're not charming. They think they're very charming. They think that they are very inquisitive and very smart, and that would be incredibly fun to roleplay. I would get to make my storyteller very uncomfortable by asking them questions constantly. Everybody's name, every location, where were they? What time was that? What day did that happen? Can you repeat that all for me again with exactly the same names and dates?
I wish I could say I was surprised by that last part.
Yeah, I'm not surprised in the least.
I think that's a good moment for us to wrap up on, though. That was a good question. I appreciate that. Thank
Got
you.
it.
Oh, some things I wanted to call out before we do our outro. We do have a website. You can find us at monstergamenight.com. I also wanted to give a little shout out to Satsuki. She is the
Yes.
artist who did our art, which is on that website. You can find some pictures of actually how we envisioned our characters looking. So that's something to check out. Has a live feed.
Yeah, absolutely. She was very pleasurable and easy to work with and did an amazing job.
Yeah, big ups.
You can't see us playing because we're not a video format, but I keep that artwork pulled up a lot because it helps me immerse myself in picturing what's going on in the scene. It's incredible. And if you need character art for a Vampire the Masquerade game, hit her up.
And a big sincere thank you for listening to everything up to this point.
Yeah,
Yes.
got more coming at you.
Yeah, we'll keep going. We're just getting started. Hey guys, we're Monster Game Night. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Mike, your storyteller, and I am joined at the table by
Ben playing Tomaso.
Nick playing Jason.
Josh playing Clear Visions.
And I'm Russell playing Gordon. Tune in next week. We release an episode every Monday. Also, please feel free to follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher. We'd love to hear from you on social media. Find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Monster Game Night. Please give us a rating, write a review, and tell your friends and family about the show if you enjoyed it. Word of mouth is the best way for a small independent show like ours to grow. And we hope that you can come to our next
Monster Game Night.